Money. My husband wants to call you. He wants to call you on your cell phone and do a combination, a merge call with you. He has some things he needs to tell you. Okay, the meeting is being recorded right now. I've got the record on. Okay, well, did you hear me about the recorder being on? Is that okay?
So can people hear me?
So Rick, do you know that you're supposed to be phoning in?
I'm on my phone. Can you not hear me?
Oh, yeah.
We can hear you, Rick.
You can hear me, but I have to do something else.
Your microphone on the computer.
Well, I'm on a telephone. You can't hear me, right? Say yes if you can hear me.
Hey, Lisa.
I'll try something different. Don, can you hear me? Yes? I can't hear you, though.
Can't hear me?
Now I'm hearing you. Nice. So, Lisa, can you
Be
hear
sure
me?
that your microphone is off on your computer and have it in through your cell phone.
I'm coming through my cell phone.
Is the video through the cell phone as well?
Yeah.
Excellent. That should work then. Thank you.
Okay. You look handsome, Don. Lisa, can you hear me? I'm not hearing people. Is there a meeting code I have to enter for audio?
Yes, Rick, there is. It's in the comments.
Okay, in the comments. Okay, I'll go back to it. I'll re-enter in just a minute. Okay.
Thank you.
You don't have it still? Where are you at?
number 9.
Right.
Now let's check the YouTube stream. It's back up, yeah.
Who's doing the 9B?
I am doing that.
Dave. Okay, I see. Okay, got it. I'm trying to work off of a new agenda and my old agenda where I had some notes, so I've got to do both.
Oh,
Okay. All right. That helps me.
Are we ready to go now?
Give us one more minute. We're trying to see if we can hear it now. We turned off the microphone. We're turning it back on to see if that makes a difference.
It's working.
It's working now.
Okay, YouTube is good.
Lisa says we've just gone live.
So it was the microphone, huh?
Yeah.
All right. I guess it didn't matter, the feedback.
Okay, we have several people saying they can hear us on the YouTube stream now.
Okay, good. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So shall we start?
Thanks, Vince.
Silence means yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Lonnie Bullard, Chairman of the Board of the School Trust Lands Administration, Chairman of the Board of Trustees. We appreciate those that are listening. We appreciate your patience. We appreciate you being here with us to conduct the business of the trust during an unprecedented time where we can't be together. The technology that affords us this opportunity is terrific, but we've had a few bugs to work out today so that the public can listen to us live on the YouTube channel, and so that we can attempt to see each other as we make presentations on the board's business as indicated on the agenda dated April 9th of 2020. I'm pretty sure that we have all of the board members present. I have indicated that we're using the chat function of Google Meeting so that board members can indicate to me if you want to make comments on any of the items that are presented today. So hopefully you've figured that out. I will also attempt during the board meeting to have pauses. Any of you that have been on these platforms during this period will recognize that sometimes awkward pauses are necessary so that people have a chance to speak up or so that we can determine to move ahead. We don't have the ability to see each other, and that's a disadvantage, but we'll try to do our best. Any comments on the welcome? Yes.
Yeah, Lonnie, this is Mike Johnson. Hey, one thing you just mentioned I think we ought to do slightly differently, just in abundance of caution, and that is you said that board members could indicate to you with the chat function there of the Google that you're on if they needed to make comment. I would suggest they just speak up on this call and tell you that, because that way the public can hear what they've said rather than have a chat that isn't viewable there on the YouTube channel.
Well, we're not having a chat, Mike. We're not saying anything on the chat. The only thing that the chat will indicate is who I need to designate and turn the time to.
Yeah,
so we're not going to take any comments on the chat.
Yeah, no, I understood that. I'm just saying that they could also just speak up and say, Mr. Chairman, and then you can recognize them that way. So
that's fine. It just becomes awkward. You tend to talk over each other on a call. I was trying to put some order to it so that I don't miss any comments that people want to make by going forward too fast and not giving people a chance to comment. But I can go as slow as we need to. We can do it that way.
I think that we could do it that way, and it'll be, as you said, if it's a little bumpy, that's all right. We'll get through it. We've been pressed into having to do a procedure that we're not used to, so but I think it'll work out.
All right, the first item on the agenda this morning is the approval of board minutes from March 12th, 2020. Those are in your board packet. Roger Barris conducted that meeting. I was listening by phone, did not participate. We had a quorum. Anyone have any comments on the minutes of March the 12th? Hearing no comments, I would be open for a motion to approve the minutes of March 12th, 2020.
This is Mike Maurer. I would move to approve the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now, Mike, do you want me to ask individually for those, or do you want me to ask for ayes? Mike Johnson.
I think you better ask individually for him.
Okay, Warren Peterson.
Aye.
Rick Woodbury.
Aye.
Roger Barris.
Aye.
Mike Maurer.
Aye.
Motion. Don Foote.
Aye.
Dave Donegan.
Aye.
And this is Lonnie, and I said aye as well. So meeting minutes have been confirmed. Next item on the agenda are the upcoming meeting dates. Because of the status of our suggestions and orders from the governor, we are canceling the May 13th to 14th board tour. We will have a normal board meeting on May the 14th. Is that right, Dave Buer?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so on May the 14th, we'll have a normal board meeting in Salt Lake City. We may do it via technology if we need to. The other meetings will stand, and there's no. We will not move that board tour until we know for sure what's happening, and until we canvass the board members to find out about availability later in the year. Any questions as to the upcoming meeting dates? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to item 4. That is the public comment by the public, county government representatives, and Utah tribes. I've spoken to Mike. I don't think we have any county government representatives and Utah tribes ready to comment. We do have some public comment. I'm going to turn the time over to Mike to conduct that public comment.
Yes, thanks, Lonnie. This is Mike Johnson, legal counsel for SITLA. We've had 6 public comments submitted. One of them is in writing, and I'm going to read that into the record. And then we have 5 people who want to call in, and I'm just going to call them in sequence so that they can give their 3 minutes of public comment. And maybe I'll just mention now for any of those people who are going to comment by phone who are listening, make sure when I call you that you turn the sound off on your computers so that you don't run into any problems with feedback. So the first comment was submitted by Raphael Cordray with the Utah tar sands resistance, and I'm going to read that comment now. SITLA should not lease trust land for tar sands or oil shale strip mining. Tar sands in Canada are backed by billions of dollars worth of existing infrastructure, and the value of the diluted bitumen from Canadian tar sands has fallen far below the cost of production. Some experts predict that Canadian tar sands will never recover from the current collapse in demand. By continuing to pursue and promote tar sands or oil shale leases in Utah, SITLA enables a lucrative scam operation. While certain folks at the top of this pyramid scheme have taken large salaries for years, for example, the CEOs of U.S. oil sands, local communities have been exploited by the false promise of riches from tar sands. Not one barrel of commercially competitive product has ever been produced from tar sands or oil shale in Utah. Meanwhile, millions of dollars have been squandered on this pursuit. It is time for SITLA to abandon this foolish and harmful pursuit. The actual commercial production will never be viable. SITLA's involvement encourages investment in companies and projects that have no chance of making a profit. This fact has been apparent for years. Now it is glaring. That's the end of the comment submitted by Raphael Cordray. I'm now going to call and allow the 5 who gave us notice to make a verbal comment over the phone. So stick with me for a minute, Mr. Chairman, and I'll get each person on the line and allow them to submit their 3 minutes of comment.
Thank you.
Hey, yeah, are you ready to go here? Okay, hold on one second. I'm going to put you on speaker. Oops, got disconnected. Yeah, hold on. Okay, are you there, Lionel?
Yes, I am.
Okay, everyone can hear you now, so go ahead and identify yourself and submit your comment.
Thank you. Thank you much. My name is Lionel Trepanier. I'm one of the directors of Utah Tar Sands Resistance, and I want to thank Mike and the board for providing this accommodation that the live public comments could be brought today. Thank you very much. I have 2 comments. Thank you. The first is the concept of holding the trust, protecting this trust, and building this trust. Now, these are the purpose. As I'm reading, I look at and I recommend that we review the SITLA Act. And in the SITLA Act, under purposes, the SITLA Act is 53C, and it has multiple sections. And there in the section 102 listing purposes, and this is where we talk about the balancing of long-term benefits and short-term gain. And particularly the requirement is that long-term benefits are not lost in an effort to maximize short-term gain. And we see this reflected both in the SITLA Act in sections 102 and in sections 302. So as we hold and protect and build this trust, one thing that's becoming very apparent is that in effort to liquidate the trust or monetize the trust through large sales of the actual land of the trust and placing that into the stock market, even if under the direction of SITFO, is placing the trust at a huge risk. And the long-term benefits could be jeopardized. So I want to thank the board and everyone who's putting their attention to these important matters here at a time when we're under a lot of stress. And I want to thank you for staying healthy and the efforts that you do to protect this trust, hold this trust, and build it. Thank you for this opportunity to comment today. That'll conclude my comment.
Okay, thanks, Lionel. Mr. Chairman, I'll get the next caller.
Thank you.
Yeah, is this Ms. Lazar? Yeah, are you ready to make a public comment? I can put you on the speaker and allow you to go now if you're ready. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, you're now on the speaker where everyone can hear you, so go ahead and identify yourself and give your 3-minute comment.
All right, thank you. My name is Elise Lazar, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I know that there are 7 members of the SITLA board, all men who represent fossil fuel interests, development, agriculture, ranching, and the governor. But I'm asking you, where is the representative for renewables? According to the bylaws of the SITLA nominating committee, which represents the intentions of the Utah legislature, there should be someone who represents the renewable industry. On your agenda for today's meeting are board committee assignments. They are listed as oil, gas, and mining, development, surface and water, governmental affairs, audit, legal, renewables, and exchanges. And then, under each one of those committees, you have names of 2 or 3 board members. However, again, under renewables, there are no names at all. Given the lower value of fossil fuels, the increased value and use of renewables as shown by the Quicksilver solar lease on the agenda today, plus all the money that renewables can provide for the children, Chairman Bullard, can you please explain why you don't have anybody on the committee representing renewables? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll get the next caller.
Thank you.
Yeah, is this Constance? Okay, yeah, Mike Johnson from SITLA. Are you ready to give your comment? I can put you on the speaker line. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, you're on speaker now. Everyone can hear you, so go ahead and identify yourself and give your comment.
Okay. My name is Constance Madro. I'm a longtime resident of Salt Lake City. I will read a poem that begins Margaret Atwood's The Year of the Flood, titled The Garden, and then make another comment. The garden. Who is it tends the garden oh so green? 'Twas once the finest garden that ever has been seen, and in it God's dear creatures did swim and fly and play. But then came greedy spoilers and killed them all away. And all the trees that flourished and gave us wholesome fruit, by waves of sand are buried, both leaf and branch and root. And all the shining water is turned to slime and mire, and all the feathered birds so bright have ceased their joyful choir. O garden, O my garden, I'll mourn forevermore, until the gardeners arise and you to life restore. That's from her collection called The Gods Gardeners Oral Hymn Book. I'm very dismayed that SITLA is continuing to promote land development for exhaustive purposes such as tar sands, tar shale, and coal. The cost to the human population and environment is way too extreme. Thanks for the chance to make a public comment. I am one of the higher risk of the current pandemic, the COVID-19, for huge complications which include death. So are coal miners, and I am very concerned that those with black lung disease would be first ones to really be hit strongly in that territory down there. I appreciate the time to make a public comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll get the next caller on the line. Yeah, is this Mr. Bean? Hi, it's Mike Johnson from SITLA. I can connect you now through the speaker here and let you give your public comment if you're ready. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, you're on the speaker now, so go ahead and identify yourself and give your comment.
Okay, thanks. My name is Ryan Beam. I work with the Center for Biological Diversity as a public lands campaigner and also participate in local grassroots climate justice organizing efforts. I wanted to start just by thanking the board for y'all's time. I hope that you, your families, and your communities are all well and staying safe. I just want to note that it is difficult to provide public comment before the content of the meeting and would encourage y'all to think about ways that you could allow for the public to better participate in the meetings. Perhaps you could allow for comments and or questions after each agenda item. So I want to speak on Mr. Summers' presentation from the Utah Mining Association titled Coal Country Overview. One of the lines in his presentation reads, quote, "promote correct narratives about coal country." While I don't want to try to put words in Mr. Summers' mouth before I've heard them, and I hope that he proves me wrong, judging by the content of his PowerPoint, it seems that he is going to say that the quote-unquote correct narrative is the same one that the industry has told for many decades, that coal is the only path to prosperity and that these communities have no other choice. As you listen to him today, all I ask is that you consider just for a moment that this worn-out narrative may no longer be the best narrative for the people of Utah's coal country, for the people of Utah, or for people around the world. Instead, consider whether there are new stories and ideas coming from other similar communities in Appalachia, or other narratives coming out of Utah's coal country itself. Look at the work of the Coal Country Strike Team or the Rural Online Initiative to provide low-carbon alternatives for work in these places. Please consider the people and their needs moving forward, not the needs of an ailing industry that is commonly acknowledged to be on its way out. The needs of the people of coal country and the needs of the Utah Mining Association are not one and the same. This is the same industry that right now is wielding the power of the National Mining Association to try to slash its payments into the Black Lung Disability Trust Fund as a viral lung infection spreads around the country, killing more every day. In this moment, more than ever, it is clear that we need to act proactively when faced with challenges. If you continue with business as usual, you are only kicking the can down the road and prolonging the pain. Thank you for your time and for considering some new stories before you make decisions to keep propping up the industry.
Okay, thank you for your comment. We have one final caller. Mr. Chairman, I'll get them on the line.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Holmes? Yeah, this is Mike Johnson from SITLA. If you're ready, I can put you on the speaker and allow you to give your comment now. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, you're on speaker where everyone can hear you. Go ahead and identify yourself and you can provide your comment.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Stan Holmes. I live in Salt Lake City, and my comment raises two related concerns. First, a slide set entitled Coal Country Overview is included with today's... are we recording?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, I'm getting a delay. Let me... Okay.
Oh, yeah, turn the sound off on your speaker. On your computer.
Okay, I've just done that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the Coal Country Overview presentation by the Utah Mining Association includes information, observations, and recommendations that are in direct conflict with those of the Utah Coal Country Strike Team. The strike team includes many Carbon and Emery County officials, such as Price City Mayor Mike Corianos. In contrast with the rosy picture painted by the UMA presentation, the Utah Coal Country Strike Team laments the fact that between 2008 and 2017, Utah's coal country employment dropped 16%, while employment across Utah rose 17%. The Utah legislature acknowledges these dire economic conditions. It gave the strike team $500,000 to find ways to address Carbon and Emery counties' above normal rates of unemployment, poverty, outmigration, opioid deaths, and housing problems. Carbon and Emery need economic pathways toward a sustainable post-coal future. Price Mayor Corianos works at the Huntington Power Plant, co-chairs the strike team, and knows that the coal economy is a dead end. He said, quote, "This is about our future, keeping our children and grandchildren in our community," end quote. So I urge members of the SITLA board and the public to visit the Utah Coal Country Strike Team website. I also urge you to invite Mayor Corianos and the U's Natalie Gocknor to address an upcoming meeting of your board. Their presentation and slide deck will provide a more accurate, if sobering, picture of economic and social conditions in Utah's coal country. SITLA and the public should compare that with UMA's coal presentation. Secondly, I urge the SITLA board to convene an info sharing session for the purpose of discussing whether current coal lease royalty rates reflect the true value and costs of coal extraction, consumption, and disposal. I'm personally familiar with how electric utility rates do not fully address or incorporate the real-world societal, economic, and environmental costs of using fossil fuels, especially coal, to generate electricity. Coal-generated electricity is far from cheap when you factor in the harms done. Same can be said of coal royalty rates that do not factor in the true costs of extracting and using coal. These externalized costs are borne by the general public and fall disproportionately on low income and communities of color. The current royalty rates are at best discriminatory and at worst racist. This session I have suggested could be held jointly with the Utah Public Service Commission, since both SITLA and PSC rate calculations should incorporate externalized costs in the public's interest of fairness and social justice. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for going to such an effort to make sure that the public has had access to our meeting today and has had the chance to comment. Appreciate all your efforts. Are there any comments by the board to the public comments that we've heard? Not, we'll move to the chair's report. Item 5. You have in your packet a list of the committee assignments of the board. Those committee assignments have been operating for some time. I wanted to take a minute today to have you look at those committee assignments and make any recommendations that you would like for areas that you have interest in, areas that you would rather not sit on a committee. And we do have down at the bottom of that page, as was pointed out, we have 2 new committees, renewables and exchanges, that we'd like to talk about. I'm going to go to Dave Ewer first to see if he's thought about the management team on each of the committees and whether there would be any changes to the management team going down the list.
No, there would not be any changes to the management team. But on the renewables, I'm adding the name of Tim Donaldson. And he will have a committee team of Kelly Baird and Ron Torgerson. So we are taking renewables very seriously. And I wanted the board to put in who they thought might want to be a board member over the renewables.
Okay. Thank you. And what about exchanges?
That is Chris Fawcett right now. we haven't had any real exchanges in place since we passed the Emory County a year ago. But I think over the next 30 days, we will start a mini exchange. And so I might ask, Mr. Chair, that we wait until next month to assign whoever it is we want to be on the exchanges.
Well, could we assign the board members today based on interest and then just not call them until you? Yeah.
Yes, we could.
So, and I assume that Justin would be the beneficiary rep under both of those committees and is the beneficiary representative under all of the committees.
Correct.
Now, let me ask one more thing before we talk about assignments. I'm on the development committee, and I know that we meet monthly. The audit committee that I'm on meets annually. The surface and water committee is not quite monthly, but maybe every other month has been the pattern. And governmental affairs is kind of as needed.
Correct.
What about oil, gas, and mining? Dave Donegan or Don or Roger, what's the pattern of meetings on oil, gas, and mining?
Typically, Lonnie, this is Dave speaking. Typically, it's as needed, but it turns out that we probably meet 7 times a year or so, a little bit more than every other month.
Right. Okay. And how about legal?
Mike Johnson, how about legal?
Yeah, I think that what we have listed here, unless the board members express a contrary interest, we kind of put this together based on the lawyers on the board comprising that committee. And so this is kind of our recommendation, but whatever the board's preference would be.
How many times a year do you think we'll be meeting?
You know, the legal committee is one that has not met as regularly as, let's say, the development committee. I do intend to call a meeting in the near future to discuss a few matters. I'm going to say probably not more than twice a year typically.
Okay, so I'll put down on my notes kind of as needed 2 times a year. So that gives the board a flavor of the meeting pattern. I would imagine, I don't know if Tim's on the call, but the renewables, any idea of how often they would meet?
If I would speak for Tim, I'm saying you're going to be meeting about 6 times a year because that is a new field that we're picking up and we're going to need a lot of outside advice. It's a very hot field right now. We are trying to stabilize our contracts into one solid form, but we have a lot of new interest coming into that. And I'd say 5 to 6 times a year, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and exchanges would, as you've indicated, would be kind of as needed. Could be very intense during some periods, and then would go for a while without meeting. Is that your intent?
I'm guessing you give us about 2 months, and I think we'll be meeting for about 2 or 3 months in a row. Then that'll be a stalemate after that.
Okay, so 2 questions for the board. One is, are you satisfied with your committee assignments? I think everybody has an assignment. And secondly, are there any interest from board members on being on the renewables committee or the exchange committee?
This is Dave Donegan. I'd like to be on the renewables committee.
Lonnie, this is Warren. I've been working in renewables for the last 3 years. I think I could contribute there as well.
Okay, Dave Donegan and Warren Peterson.
Lonnie, this is Don Foote. I served on the exchange committee previously. I'd be happy to do that again.
Don Foote on the exchange committee.
This is Rick Woodbury. We've done, if we look at our office, we put over all through our office on the roof. I don't have a lot of experience in this, but we're consumers of renewables, and I would like to participate on the renewable committee, but would defer if there was somebody better qualified.
Okay, we have interest from Rick on the renewables committee. Any other interest from board members?
Lonnie, this is Roger.
Yes.
Back in the day when I served in the legislature, I chaired both the Public Utilities Subcommittee and the Natural Resources Subcommittee. As such, I dealt quite a bit with renewables. In fact, sponsored some of the legislation that dealt with renewables. So I could probably add something from that perspective.
Okay. Mike Johnson, that would be the limit, right? 4?
No, 3.
Can we have 4? Oh, the limit is 3?
Yes, 3.
So, this is Rick. I'd be happy to back off in lieu of Roger.
Okay, thank you. So we have Dave Donegan, Warren Peterson, and Roger Barris on the renewables committee. Any other interest with Don on the exchange committee? I think we need at least one more board member.
Maybe.
May I make a suggestion, Dave? I would like to have Rick Woodbury on that committee because it's going to be a little bit of a different exchange this time, and we're trying to do something differently that I think would be right down Rick's alleyway. I think he'd have a lot of expertise on this one.
Okay, I was just going to volunteer, so I'd be happy to do that. This is Rick. I'd be happy to do that.
Dave, does it make sense to have Mike Maurer also on that exchange committee because of his flow of information on just what?
I think he would be a good temperature gauge on the politics on that. Yes, I do, Mr. Chair.
Right. Okay, I think those would be two very strong committees. Any comments on the subcommittee assignments and what you see on that page? Hearing none, I would. Do we need to take act? I think I would entertain a motion that we approve the subcommittee assignments of the Board of Trustees according to what's on this sheet remaining, and with the addition of Dave Donegan, Warren Peterson, and Roger Barris on the Renewables Committee, with staff being Tim Donaldson, Kelly Beard, and Ron Torgeson, and Don Foote, Rick Woodbury, and Michael Maurer on the Exchange Committee, with Chris Fawcett taking the management role on that committee. Justin Atwater being the beneficiary rep on those as well. To entertain a motion to that effect.
This is Dave. I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Don. I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Okay, let's see. Warren Peterson.
Aye.
How would you vote? Rick Woodbury.
Yeah, aye, yes.
Roger Barris.
Aye.
Mike Maurer, I believe, is off the call for, he may rejoin us, but he had to drop off. Don Foote.
Aye.
Dave Donegan.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. So thank you very much. And I know that a lot of time and effort is put into the subcommittee assignments. I think that's a very, very valuable role that the board plays in attempting to assist the staff in these areas. And I look forward to that renewables committee. And I think there's very good work that can be done on that in the future. Okay. Next, we have the advocate report. And Justin, I believe you're still on the call. We'll turn the time over to you for the advocate report.
Thank you.
Your camera is not on, so I can't see on Google Meetings, Justin. I don't know why that is. Are you out in the field somewhere? You're not golfing, are you?
I wish I were golfing right now. Maybe a little bit worse. But
Okay.
I'm not in front of my computer, so I apologize for that.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman Bullard. I just have two very brief comments that I want to make. Number one is in relationship to the discussion you were just having relative to committee membership. As you all know, the Advocacy Office staffs the SITLA Board Nominating Committee. And that committee is meeting tomorrow morning through the afternoon to conduct the first round of interviews for the next board member of the SITLA Board. I can't predict and I can't say that there will be a nominee submitted to the governor out of that meeting, just given the circumstances in the world right now. But there are 7 candidates that will be interviewed tomorrow, and that committee will discuss whether there's further rounds of interviews. And I will say that there is a strong emphasis on those that have been submitted to that nominating committee on renewable energy. And so I don't think that impacts what you're doing today in terms of determining your committee, because that appointment won't be made until into the summer. But I just wanted to make you aware that is happening starting tomorrow.
Thank you.
The only other thing I wanted to state for the board today, as you move forward in the agenda into items 7, 8, and 9, I want to state for the record that the Advocacy Office, myself, and Jesse Stewart have participated in all of the subcommittee meetings and staff discussions on all of these items. And we've been satisfied with the discussions, and our questions have been answered. And we are supportive of the items on the agenda, and just wanted to make that clear from the beneficiary's perspective. We think all of these items are great things moving forward for the trust, and appreciate the things that staff and the board is doing in that regard.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate you doing that now, since it's hard to go back and forth a little bit. But we sincerely appreciate your participation on each of these committees and what you add to the discussion always. And I'm glad that you were able to sit in on all of the items that were on the board today. Anything else for us today?
No, thank you. Thank you for your time. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, but that's all I have.
Okay, very good. Any comments from the board on Justin's report? If not, we'll move to item 7, notifications, and I'll turn the time over to Kyle, who will take, I believe, the first 3, and then Troy, he'll turn the time over to Troy for item D.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to be with you all here. Hopefully you can all hear me. So we have 4 items from the development group that are on the notification calendar. Just by way of clarification, these are not items that require any board action. They are for notification purposes. There are three transactions down in southern Utah we are looking at, all of which are in the Sienna Hills area, 2 sales and 1 purchase of a fiber optics building, and then 1 that is a solar lease that it would be supporting of another transaction in Tooele County. I think rather than just go through and do an actual presentation on all of these, I would ask what questions the board may have. I have Aaron Langston on the line for Sienna Hills that can answer deeper questions, and also Troy on the line for the Quicksilver Solar. So I would open up for the board, Mr. Chair, at your indulgence for any questions that they might have for any of these items.
I might just say that these items, the first 3 items, were taken up in the development committee, I believe, Kyle, that's correct?
Yes.
That's correct. And the development committee was in approval of items A, B, and C. I think item D was also taken up in the development committee and received that committee's nod of approval as well.
That is correct.
If there's any difference to that recollection, I would ask Roger or Rick to make any comments about those.
This is Roger. I was in those meetings, and the presentations were very thorough, and we did feel that we should move forward with those.
So the first three are sales. We have any questions from the board regarding, Kyle, would you want us just to go into questions? Feeling that there's really the packet of information is sufficient to garner the details of those?
Yes, I believe so. And considering the format, I think it's better if we just move to questions and kind of zero in on things that need to be answered.
Hey, Kyle, this is Dave Donegan.
Yes, sir.
Quick question on the third one where you're going to buy the building and move the St. George office into this building. Are you going to suffer any lease costs for moving out of the building you're currently in?
Going to suffer any what? I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Lease termination costs?
No, our lease currently is on a month-to-month, so there won't be any termination. We'll just time it so that it will leave early with no termination cost.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Roy, do you have anything for us on the solar?
No, I don't. The only thing I would add is that the real estate committee did make a couple of recommendations, and those have been included into this approval, and I've notified the potential lessee of those recommendations that they would need to provide a site plan and survey and legal descriptions that would be part of the actual lease before we execute it, so that we don't have any issues going forward with them needing to reduce that lease area or reduce that lease footprint, et cetera. But otherwise, I'm available for questions if you have them.
Okay, because these are notification only, just know that these 4 items will be moving forward unless there are questions from the board that they can address. Appreciate your work on these, and sounds like those will be moving forward.
Thank you, Mr.
I'll move
Chairman.
now to
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman,
move now. Yes.
Yes, on the Quicksilver solar lease, the 7-year pre-development phase. That typically that's for power purchase agreement to be set up for queuing on connections and so on. Troy, do you have a feel for where the company is on that, or are they waiting for the lease approval before they proceed?
Yes, so they
memo
actually... Yeah, sorry, let me try and answer your question there. They have already started negotiations, and I believe that negotiation is with Facebook. So although they've asked for the typical 7-year, which is typical for our solar leases, they have asked for that same time frame. I expect that we would actually see this one built hopefully within 3 to 4 years, and they would be moving forward much quicker. They need to have the control of the land, as you may be aware, in order to finalize the power purchase agreement. And so once they have the lease in place, then they can finalize the power purchase agreement. And I believe Facebook would be looking to purchase this power. It's partially a political win for Facebook as well, because if they have folks visiting their campus, the solar field will basically be up on the hill just to the east of where Facebook's data center is, and they can point to it and say, that's where we're getting our power from.
They can also say, and we're supporting the school children of Utah by having it there. So it's a good story. I was trying compliment to you because the slope of that property is something that solar companies are usually willing to deal with. But looks like you're successful in negotiating the lease. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good question. I appreciate that. Any other questions? Now I will move to Director Ewer and turn the time over to you, Dave, for notification of current events and the presentation from the Utah Mining Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We last met on March the 12th, the last day of the session, legislative session. And the only thing I can say is it's been a long month. The legislature did pass Senate Bill 100 under Okerlund. The governor signed it about 4 or 5 days ago. The legislature also passed a trespassing bill that puts the trespassing crime on the same level as a crime on private property. The governor signed that one. HB 269, which was tax credits for the development of hydrogen, mainly down on the IPP block. The governor vetoed that bill about 3 days ago. I haven't found out the exact reasons why, but that was by Representative Sagers. We'll find out more details on that as it goes down the road. You'll remember a week after the session, we had an earthquake here of 5.7, and I believe that according to people who are on the 6th floor, it was much worse than that because of the swaying of the building. I would dare say that as I was coming up the stairs and I met Bridget Carney coming down, it would have taken about 4 or 5 men, much stronger than I, to hold her in that stairwell. She was coming out those doors no matter what. Though she may not be very tall, I would not want to be tangled with her coming down that stairwell. We then later on had a 4.6 about 1 o'clock. I dismissed almost all the employees. Well, I dismissed all the employees after the first one, just because everybody was so rattled. We did have engineers come in, and they were going through both the building and the parking structure. I was in the building at 1 o'clock when the 4.6 hit, and I decided I wasn't as tough as I thought I was, so I was going out the stairwell. As the engineer was coming out of the number 4 on the 4th floor, I asked him if the building was safe, of which he guaranteed it was, but he was leaving the building too. He was not willing to back his life on his surveying of the safety of the building. But anyway, the earthquake started. It got us to realize we didn't have much of an emergency plan in place, of which I have assigned Patrick Johnson to put an emergency plan in place for the next 30 days, of which he is working very hard on that. And then we get into the virus part of the month. The rules that I put up for the staff was to work from home if that's where you want to work. If you want to work here from the building, you do what you feel comfortable in doing and you feel safe at. And according to DHRM, we were probably the only organization that didn't have a bunch of complaints, just because people are wise enough to take care of themselves. We have about 14 or 15 people that come here every day. They wear masks. They do what they do. They do what they want to feel comfortable. Work is progressing. According to management, they think that we're doing very good on our output from our home dwellings. Time will tell, but I do know this, that there's very little work coming in the front door. People are wanting to wait and see. I do know that, according to what Kyle has told me, there's been some people that wanted a 30-day kind of a cooling off period on some of the contracts we are offering right now. Time will only tell. And then we get into the oil disasters. There for about a week, 10 days, oil was below $20. Today it's at $26.75. Who knows what's going to happen? I think that OPEC and Russia meets today to determine what their future is going to be as far as flooding the market with cheap oil. I will say that I bought gas here in Salt Lake for $2.05 2 or 3 days ago. I guess that's the only advantage we have in having such cheap oil prices. If you may have heard on the radio this morning, in the last 3 weeks, there's been over 17 million people asked for unemployment benefits. And I believe that a month ago we had 401ks. Then we dropped down to 201ks. Now we're processing maybe a 301k. I don't know where it's going to end. But the market is reacting very, very fast. But I do know this, and I think that those of you like Lonnie and Rick that are in the construction business or the building business, there are starting to be holes in the pipeline in being able to supply the products we need across the United States. I've heard enough complaints from people processing food and also in the construction that sometimes they're not able to get the materials. It's on a day-by-day change of which the governor is very much aware of and Mike is very much aware of it. I would guess that along about the 1st of July that when we have a board meeting, we spend quite a bit of time trying to advise from you as the Board of Trustees and then take advantage of your experiences as some of the things we're going to be facing. I do know that within the next week, 10 days, the legislature will be in session and will be making, I think, major changes to the budget. That's the governor's call and legislature's call, and we will follow suit, whatever they would ask us to do. But if it's anything that we do know that there will be changes in whatever we have been doing in the past because of the budget cuts. Now that does not, the legislature itself does not appropriate our money. It comes from the trust, but I do believe that the legislature will ask us what they would want us to do in order to be on the same standards as the rest of the government employees. I don't know, I'm only guessing that. But those things are all taking place. Mr. Chair asked me to report on the exchanges. The UTTR exchange has been slowed up a little bit in the fact that because of the earthquake, they had some water damage, broken pipes in the state BLM office. But Chris Fawcett is working very hard on that. Let me just give you a real brief report that he threw together a couple of days ago. We are anticipating that there'll be a fairly significant value gap between our property values and the BLM property values, of which we will have to put in some either tortoise habitat down in St. George or some other ground down there that'll have a much higher value that we might be able to equalize the value between the two of us. The BLM is in the process of moving the NEPA reports along. The BLM anticipates sending those packages back to Washington, D.C., hopefully within the next week to 2 weeks. I have alerted our lobbyist back there that when they get back to D.C., I expect him to camp on the Department of Interior's doors to make sure they're not held up on a desk like they were in the Emery County bill there for about 6 to 7 weeks. So Alan Freemeyer has definitely been alerted to that to know when to start going. On the Emery County bill, we have not really taken a real hard aggression on that because the BLM doesn't have the employees to cover it. But Lisa Wells is doing a lot of compiling of legal descriptions and title information. So there's a lot of easy work that we're doing right now. So when we finish off the UTTR bill, we can go headlong into it, and all of the peripheral materials have already been gathered. Chris Fawcett is working on this every day of the week. That's his number one responsibility. He has solicited some help from Jim Davis to help put things together. We really hope the UTTR bill is done somewhere around October, November. because we do have major contracts waiting for us to get the paperwork in our hands and get it signed. We can turn around the next day and sign some other contracts. So that's what we're facing right there on the exchanges. I believe that it's probably more important, and I'm assuming Justin's still on the line, that it's probably more important now that SITLA, and the advocacy office meet very often. I'm saying every other month or something like that, just to address where each one of us are going. Do we have any doubling up on some of the interests we're going on, or we can advise each other so we feel like the economy is going. It'll be interesting to see in the construction industry if that starts to back off in the next 30 to 40, 60 days. And if it is backing off, is that the time for us to try and put some of our new infrastructure in place? If we can get a $4 million job done for $2.5 million or something like that, you understand where I'm coming from. Those will be the decisions that we would ask you as board members to try and advise us on and keep going down that road. So, Mr. Chair, that's all the report I have right now. At least for me personally, I would turn time, if there are any questions for me, if there's not, I'll turn time over to Brian Summers.
Any questions from board members for Dave on current events? Any questions from the board?
Okay, Brian Summers, are you still online with us?
I am. Can you hear me, Dave?
I can. Let me introduce you, and then we also explain why I thought it was important that the board hear your comments. For those listening on the public right now, by far a good share of our coal that's being produced is going overseas. And we can complain about coal on the whole as we want to, but the coal that we are replacing that's overseas is a much lower quality than what we're doing. We are actually cleaning the atmosphere overseas by shipping our coal over there, because there's many more BTUs per ton than there is the coal that they're using over there. We understand that the coal use here in this nation is dwindling, but we are concentrating on our exports. So with that, Brian, I believe a lot of your PowerPoints is talking about overseas markets. So why don't you take over from there, Brian?
Great. Thank you, Dave. And just so I can ask, for those that can see the presentation on the screen, for those members of the board, are you able to see my screen now?
Yeah, I can see.
Yes, it's up. Okay, great. So I appreciate the invitation to address the board. So I'm going to be going over a presentation that I gave to the Rural Caucus during the legislative session, which Dave saw, and he asked me to come and repeat it here. I would like to take a moment, if I could, just to give a little, very, very quick overview of some of the other mining industry, some data points on the overall mining industry that I think also feed into the value of this discussion we're going to have specifically about our coal commodity. We're very blessed in the state to have a very rich mineral estate here. We produce critical minerals here, industrial minerals, precious metals, coal, uranium, unconventional metals, or unconventional fuels rather. I actually have gone through our historical archives at the Utah Mining Association, which started in 1915, and we have found that of the 35 minerals that are on the Department of Interior's critical minerals list, that we have historical records of production for 16 of those 35 critical minerals. And we have known reserves for a lot of those things, and if market conditions ever permit, that we could produce some of those rare earths and other commodities that we're now wholly reliant on foreign sources for, that could be a wonderful opportunity for the state, and especially for those rural counties where most of these mineral commodities are located. And just to give you a sense of the scale of production, in 2018 there was $6.8 billion worth of extractive production. That's the last year that we've got complete data for. And of that, 3.7 billion was in mineral production and mining production, which is a 14% increase from the year before. And overall, the mining industry supports 43,500 jobs in the state of Utah. And so it's, again, a huge benefit to the state to have the mineral production that we have here. And just to give you a sense of the direct impact that it has on overall GDP, and then I'm going to get into some specifics about the benefits that it has in the coal-producing counties, especially. This is the extractive economy, the extractive industries in the state, which, for classification purposes includes both oil and gas and mineral development, was a combined 1.4% of Utah GDP, which is roughly $20 billion a year in economic impact on the state. There's $40 million in annual combined severance tax, $112 billion in CIB contributions last year. And in 2018, we had $41.8 million in combined SITLA royalties. We have multiple counties in the state where extractive industries are a top 10 employer, and extractive industries are the largest private employer in Carbon, Duchesne, Emery, Morgan, and Sevier County. And sort of to this criticism that mining is a less appealing industry for workers, that's just simply not the case. When you look at DWS data, mining actually has the highest average monthly wages of any industry that's tracked by DWS, including IT, including services, business and legal services, et cetera. So, given we don't have quite as many workers as some of those others, but these are very highly compensated industries and highly skilled industries. So to talk specifically about our coal country, and I'm going to respond to some of the information that's been put out there by the coal country strike team that's been referenced in today's meeting. Just to give you an overview of what's going on in Utah's coal country right now, we've got 8 mines that are currently producing in the state. There's 7 underground mines and 1 surface mine. You can see a little map here on the presentation that goes over the mines that are producing and also shows our power plants. We've got power plants that produce the vast majority of the power that we consume here in the state. And the power plants are the primary customer for the production in our coal mines here in the state. And I'll talk about that a little more specifically as we get into the presentation. So there's been a lot of bad information that's been put out by the coal country strike team, and so I'd like to correct a few points here. First of all, the idea that coal dependence, they've used a much lower number for coal dependence, and they've said that 44% of Utah's electricity comes from coal-fired power plants. It's actually 66% that comes from coal-fired power plants. So again, Utah Coal is providing the vast majority of the power that we consume here in the state of Utah. And if you combine that with the gas production that we have as well, between coal and natural gas, that's about 84% of the power that we're generating here in the state comes from fossil fuels. And while there has been growth in alternative energy sources and renewable energy sources over the last number of years, and there will continue to be that, again, the vast majority of what the power that we enjoy here in the state of Utah is coming from fossil fuels and especially from coal. And if you look at the benefit that the state gleans from this, we have some of the lowest electricity prices in the country. You can see in front of you a map that shows all of the 50 states, or at least the states here in the continental U.S., and this is from the Energy Information Agency, which is a federal agency that tracks these types of issues. And you can see that here in the state of Utah, again, we're 66% dependent on coal generation, and we've got some of the cheapest power prices in the state to the point that we're even competing with the energy prices in the Pacific Northwest, where they're powered primarily by hydropower. And you can also see that some of the states that have the highest costs of electricity in the country are those that have very little coal dependence. And so this is something that, has provided a huge benefit for the state of Utah and has fueled a lot of the economic growth that we've had. If you look at any of the information that, the GOED, that the Economic Development Corporation of Utah, or, our corporate recruitment folks, and even the governor talk about, they talk consistently about our reliable and inexpensive energy as being one of the reasons that the corporations and manufacturing facilities and other industries should come and locate their operations in the state of Utah. Some misinformation that's been put out by the Coal Country Strike Team is that Utah's Hunter and Huntington power plants are likely to close within a decade, and that's not true. So according to Rocky Mountain Power's Integrated Resource Plan, which they have to file with the Public Service Commission, which they did at the end of last year, the closure for the Hunter Power Plant is supposed to be in 2036 and Huntington in 2042. And so this is, these are plants that are going to continue to be operating for a long time into the future. And if you think about the type of technological and market changes that can happen within, a 16-year period, here we are in 2020, and in 2036 is 16 years in advance. If you look the other way and think about what was going on in the state of Utah 16 years ago, I went back and looked at this, and according to Business in Utah magazine, which is something that's put out by what was then called the Office of Community and Economic Development, the largest tech company in the state of Utah was Novell, which doesn't even exist anymore in any real form. And so if you think about the types of industries that we have now that are driving a lot of our economic growth in the state, and you think about all of the companies that are relying on the Internet of Things and are producing apps and other things that are taking advantage of the massive growth in internet technologies and smartphones and other things, and the sharing economy, et cetera, et cetera. These are technologies that barely existed 16 years ago and that now are driving whole segments of our economy. And when you think about the potential for technology development in the next 16 years, who knows where we're going to be in 16 years. And at that point, we could very well have grid-scale batteries that we don't have right now. We could very well have small modular nuclear reactors, which are just in development at this point. We could very well have economic carbon capture technologies, which could take the carbon from all of these plants and sequester it in geological formations and allow these plants to continue to produce reliable economic energy for the state of Utah without the carbon emissions that now are the downside of that type of generation. So for us to be picking winners and losers in 2020 when our plants are scheduled to be online for another 16 to 22 years is just nonsensical. Another piece of misinformation that was put out by the Coal Country Strike Team is that currently there are 925 mining jobs in Carbon and Emery County, and shows that down from a peak in 1985. The actual number of coal jobs that we have in Utah right now is 1,316 from our producing mines at this point. And so that may not seem like a huge disparity, but when you think again about the counties that these industries are operating in, and you think about the wages that these industries pay, shorting by almost 400 jobs is a huge discrepancy in terms of the economic impact that these coal operations have in rural Utah. And speaking to that specifically, I want to talk about one of the great opportunities that we hope to have in front of us this year, and I'm hoping that this COVID-19 pandemic that we're going through doesn't threaten these plans. But Wolverine, Wolverine, which is our largest coal operation in the state, plans to open up a new coal mine in Emery County this year that they're calling the Fossil Rock Mine. And this has the potential for bringing up to 300 jobs if this becomes a longwall operation. And again, these are very highly compensated jobs and would be a huge benefit to these rural counties. And the other beauty of the Fossil Rock Mine is that the vast majority of the coal that they would be mining is actually SITLA coal, whereas now most of the coal we're mining is federal coal, and so we are getting a percentage of that back as the state, but we wouldn't have in the Fossil Rock mine, the vast majority of those revenues come directly into SITLA and for the benefit of SITLA's beneficiaries, as opposed to having a large portion taken by the federal government. And just to speak about demand from coal, I mean, we've heard this sort of idea that coal is a dying industry, and Dave referenced that there has been a diminishment in the amount of power generation that uses coal as its primary fuel supply. That being said, a lot of that, again, is driven by the very cheap price of natural gas, which may not continue given some of the market disruptions that we're having currently with this COVID-19 and OPEC issues. But even if the demand here is not as steady as it used to be, there is increasing demand on the world scale, on the worldwide scale. And for the first time ever, coal power worldwide reached 2,000 gigawatts. So there's more coal generation happening across the world now than there ever has been before, and this is a 65% increase from 2003. 40 nations have added coal generation since 2010, and there are 300 gigawatts in building or planning stages of coal-fired generation overseas. And just to give you a sense of the scale of that, that's more coal-fired generation that's being planned overseas than we have here in the U.S. And just in Japan alone, and you can see a picture here from one of the Japanese plants, there are 22 coal-fired power plants under construction in Japan currently. And that's where the vast majority of Utah coal goes, is to Japan. And to talk about this a little bit, most of our exports, again, do go to Japan. And Utah coal, because of its nature in terms of being very high BTU and very low sulfur, very low ash, it commands a premium on the international marketplace. Really, the only coal that can compete with Utah coal in terms of quality is some of the Australian coals, and the Utah coal is actually marketed on the international markets as Uinta Premium. And we talk a lot about having the greatest snow on Earth, and really we have the greatest coal on Earth here as well, and hopefully someday we can have some license plates with that on it as well. But again, in terms of the increased demand that you have for coal overseas, and in terms of coal-fired generation and the various aspects of our coal which make it more desirable for generation, again, in terms of it being low sulfur, low ash, high BTU, it's much better to be burning Utah coal or, again, high-quality Australian coal in these new power plants that are being constructed than it is to burn Indonesian coal or Chinese coal, because that coal has very few of the benefits that Utah coal has. It's very low BTU, it's very high sulfur, very high ash, et cetera, and so you're getting much less bang for the buck in terms of having to burn a lot more of it, and it's dirtier as you burn it. And so the benefits to burning Utah coal, again, just because of its inherent properties, are very apparent. And then to talk specifically about some of the economic impacts that have become a discussion point with this Coal Country Strike Team. I want to talk, and this isn't based on modeling, this is based on data from the Department of Workforce Services, and anybody can go and look this up on the Department of Workforce Services site. The average monthly wages for miners in Emory County are 61% higher than the county average, and so that's all other industries. The county average 61% higher for miners. And then in Emory County, 3 of the top 10 largest employees are coal mines or coal-fired. And hopefully, again, this doesn't get completely erased in this current crisis, but in 2018, there was 6.4% job growth in Emory County, 4.8% unemployment. There were only 208 unemployed people in Emory County, and there was 109 positions needed to reach the 2.3% unemployment, which was Utah's unemployment rate before the current crisis hit. And so again, if you think about adding potentially a new mine in Emory County that could have up to 300 employees, that could essentially, just with that one operation, take Emory County to the same statewide unemployment rate that we had before the current crisis. And, one of the things that's been promoted with the Coal Country Strike Team is this idea that leisure and hospitality operations are somehow going to be able to replace mining jobs. And again, if you see here, this is the average monthly wage for a miner in Emory County was $5,983 for leisure and hospitality. It was just a hair over $1,300. So you can see, that's 358% greater money that you're making working in a mining operation than you would be in a leisure hospitality operation. In Carbon County, we're seeing that average monthly wages there for miners are 124% higher than the county average, and 5 of the top 15 employers are mines or service companies that provide services to mine operators. And they had 5.1% job growth in 2018, 4.5% unemployment, which is again is a lot higher than the state average, but is better than it has been for a number of years. And currently they have the lowest, pre-crisis, the lowest unemployment numbers in 10 years in Carbon County. And so just to give you a breakout of this again, in Carbon County, if you're a miner, on average, you're making $7,542 a month. In leisure and hospitality, the average county wage is $1,020, and so you're making 639% more money working in a mining operation, excuse me, than you would in a leisure and hospitality business. And then also, if you look at the total county employment in terms of mining and leisure and hospitality industries, currently you've got, or in 2018, you had 836 people working in mining, and these numbers are actually higher now. And in leisure, you had 748 people, so about 11, almost 12% more people working in mining than in leisure and hospitality. Here's the thing that's very interesting. If you look at the aggregated wages, so again, only 12% more people are working in mining than are working in leisure and hospitality. But if you look at the aggregate wages, $75.9 million in mining wages throughout the county, $9.2 million in leisure and hospitality. So with 12% more people working in mining, you had 722% more aggregated wages for the county from mining than you did from leisure and hospitality. So frankly, the idea that leisure and hospitality in Carbon and Emory County are going to replace mining is just nonsensical. And even when you look at counties that have a more well-developed tourism infrastructure, like Grand County or San Juan County, these numbers aren't quite as dramatic, but they still hold up. In San Juan County, for example, it's about 200% higher, more that you're making working in a mining operation than you are in working in a leisure hospitality operation. And the aggregate wages there are substantially higher, even though they have actually fewer people in San Juan County working in mining than they do in leisure and hospitality. And so again, the idea that leisure and hospitality is somehow going to make up for a loss of mining jobs is it's simply nonsensical. So one of the things that we asked, and again, this was a presentation that I gave to a legislative caucus, but one of the things we asked them to do there is, what can legislators and what can other state officials and community leaders do to help our coal industry? And the first is that you promote correct narratives about coal country. The coal country in Utah is not Appalachia. That's something that, is you see over and over again in the materials that are put out by the Coal Country Strike Team, where they're comparing Utah's coal country to Appalachia or to other coal economies in the U.S., and it's just simply not the same. Again, we have higher quality coal. We already have a more efficient industry. We have a smaller industry. And so the kind of bleeding that you're seeing in Appalachia or even in the Powder River Basin in Wyoming just simply doesn't compare to the types of operations that we have here in the state of Utah. And that's something that has to be stated over and over again. Utah's coal country is not Appalachia, and it never will be. And we need to support the industry that we have on the ground here, and not some vision of a dying industry like they may have in other coal economies here in the U.S. Another thing to do is to support coal-friendly legislation, and we're very lucky on the state level that generally our legislature does promote coal-friendly legislation. We have a lot more success on the state level than we have on the federal level, frankly, and that's something that I hope continues. And another thing is to engage with traditional industries. So we see a lot of economic development talk that comes out of Salt Lake City, where we're talking about again, leisure and hospitality or telework and other things that are going to promote economic development in rural Utah. And I believe firmly that all economic development should be additive and not subtractive. We should be looking for ways to diversify economies and add new industries and not replace existing industries. But any economic development plan in rural Utah that does not include traditional industries like mining and oil and gas and agriculture and manufacturing, I do not believe we're ever going to work, because again, these are the industries that are building wealth and that are driving real family and community sustaining wages in rural Utah. And then also the request that we had for the legislature specifically is to fund those that are on the ground in rural Utah and not intermediaries in Salt Lake City. Nobody in rural Utah needs the Kem Gardner Institute in Salt Lake City to come and tell them what to do. They know what to do. They know what they need. If there are housing issues, if there are health issues, or there are other issues that need to be solved on the ground, there are communities and institutions on the ground and industries on the ground in rural Utah that can help solve those problems much better and much faster than any think tank in Salt Lake City or any university in Salt Lake City. So that's the request that we have, is that instead of giving money to think tanks in Salt Lake City and the avenues, please give it to those institutions in rural Utah that are actually providing the services and that are going to find the solutions, and engage with the industries that are providing the jobs that these rural Utahns are working in now. And that's the overview that we gave. And I'd love to take any questions if you have time, Mr. Chair.
Brian, thank you for that presentation. Do we have any questions from board members? Any comments?
Hey, Lonnie, this is Don. Hey, Brian, thank you so much for your comments here. You know, the one thing that people tend to believe here in Utah, that coal is dead, and it's anything but dead. And when you look at what the rest of the world is burning for coal, you can certainly see why they appreciate getting the coals that come from Utah. I think now with the virus the way it is, and you've seen a lot of these plants as well as other industries shut down, and air gets cleaner and that. Utah's coal helps to in the initiative to get cleaner air. And you know, when you mine coal and ship it out of the state, you bring the revenue into the state as you're shipping coal to the other countries, and you are not polluting our own air at all, because just mining the coal has no impact whatsoever on our environment. So I appreciate your comments, and that you're doing what you can to help rural Utah in generating revenues, which in turn generates substantial revenues to our school kids as well.
And I appreciate that. And if I could just say one thing on that, I mean, one of the other things that becomes difficult for us in just messaging about the reality of coal industry specifically is this confusion that people have with regard to air quality versus climate change issues. And there's no emissions in the air sheds here on the Wasatch Front, which again are in non-attainment and have been for a number of years, that come from coal-fired generation. I mean, all of the coal-fired generation that we have in Utah is in attainment areas, and it doesn't contribute to the air quality issues we have on the Wasatch Front. And so it is a benefit that people can drive more electric cars and other things, and it can have the reliable electricity that they need on the Wasatch Front. And there's no air quality emissions, particulate emissions, that are contributed there from the coal plants. And I think to your other point that, even with the carbon emissions, which again, we recognize that's a byproduct of fossil fuel generation, and every form of generation has a downside. There are externalities in every form of power generation, whether it's nuclear or renewables or anything else. But in terms of the carbon emissions, again, burning Utah coal is much better because you burn less of it because it's so high BTU. And also, the idea that we have major economic benefits from the reliable power that we have here. And, shutting down Utah's coal plants is going to be a fraction of a percentage of global emissions. And yet we have people, advocating for that to shut down our coal plants. Even though, again, from a global warming perspective, from a climate change perspective, that's going to do almost nothing to reduce global emissions. But shipping more Utah coal overseas to be burned in these other power plants that are currently, again, burning Chinese coal or Indonesian coal could have a much larger effect. So I appreciate that.
Lonnie, this is Warren. Could I ask Brian a question also?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Brian, a lot of interesting comments or information you provided us. I read a report yesterday saying that China, now that they're somewhat past the peak with the coronavirus, their commodity demand is back to 95% of the pre-COVID-19 crisis. So they're coming back on. Good information you gave us on Japan using coal now, probably to replace nuclear in some respects. So the Utah premium coal, Uinta premium coal. But as you look at sources in Australia compared to sources in Utah, I'm wondering how efficient the market is. That is to say, if Utah coal is not in the market, and we're not letting that coal become part of the export, making up export demand, will the distribution chains, supply chains, become so dedicated, say, to a source such as Australia coal that we're out of the market essentially? Does that make sense? If the market's truly efficient, truly efficient, then we're not worried. But if it's very supply chain constrained, then by not getting our coal out of the market, we're basically giving up the market permanently to other producers.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. And we've been fortunate up until now that we've been able to maintain a decent amount of port access so that we can make sure that our coal is on the international marketplace. And there are a lot of issues that go into that. Obviously, I mean, part of the reason that the Japanese like our coal is because they do have newer power plants and they operate at a much higher efficiency level and demand a premium coal product in order for them to operate in the way that they want them to. Other power plants that are being built elsewhere in the world are not necessarily built to that same standard, and so to some degree they would prefer a lower quality product. But it is very important that we maintain port access in order to make sure that those international commodity markets can continue to operate, and that our product is available. Because you're right. I mean, after a certain point, if a product becomes, if shipments become unreliable, then we'll just get frozen out of the global supply chain. And that's part of the reason that the state of Utah has been very aggressive in trying to maintain port capacity in the face of lawsuits from and code restrictions and other things from coastal states and from coastal cities. We've been battling with the city of Oakland for a number of years. We're now about to get into a legal challenge with the city of Richmond that has passed a local ordinance that would ban coal handling there. And so the state needs to be on top of making sure that we do have port access. And frankly, the more we could expand that access, which is something that's been talked about in looking at potential, deep water port opportunities in Mexico and elsewhere, where you may not have some of these political problems that you're running into in California and Washington and some of the other coastal states. That could see huge dividends, especially as a continued places becomes increasingly important.
Thank you, Lonnie. Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members or others on the call.
This is Mike Mauer.
Ronnie?
Just wanted to tell Brian thanks for the report and thanks for what he's doing for the people of my native Carbon and Emery counties. It's appreciated.
Thanks, Mike.
Ronnie, this is Mike Johnson. Yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah.
note for the I think this is apparent, but just for the record that the PowerPoint slides there utilized by Mr. Summers and viewed by the board are the slides that were posted to the public notice website. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Well, thank you, Brian, for your presentation. We appreciate it. Appreciate the board members that have taken part in that today and have made it through this part of the agenda because Michael, it's good to have you back. The next items on the agenda require board action, number 9. And the first one, I'll turn the time over to Andy Bedingfield, resource specialist in mining, to talk about a royalty adjustment for a coal lease. Andy, are you still there?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The previous presentation dovetails very well into this item. Because this mine is the Emery Deep Mine, which is located in Emery County. It's a smaller mine, it's a room and pillar mine, and they mine between 500,000 to 1 million tons per year. Most of their production comes off of fee coal. Occasionally they mine federal coal, and occasionally they mine SITLA coal. If you refer to the map that was included with the board memo, I apologize, I'm not on video, I'm just on my phone here. This lease footprint has 3 scattered parcels. And so as they run the room and pillar mine, sometimes they're on SITLA coal and sometimes they're not. They've had some difficult mining issues down there recently, particularly on a SITLA parcel, where they've had a lot of high water coming into the mine. They've had some roof control issues and had to do extra bolting. And so they've requested from SITLA a reduction in the royalty rate. Our typical royalty rate for an underground mine is 8% of gross, which is what also the federal government has in their leases. This reduction would allow us to be flexible, and in areas where there's difficult mining conditions would be reduced to 5%. So this proposal is not reducing all of the coal down to 5%, but it would allow us to be able to reduce that in areas where the cost of mining the coal is somewhat prohibitive. So this gives us would give us some good flexibility to be able to ensure that the SITLA coal is mined and it doesn't get bypassed for coal that doesn't have any difficult mining conditions. I think that's about all. Are there any questions by any of the trustees?
Andy, I assume you took... Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Roger. Just a quick question. Again, this royalty rate reduction only applies when adverse mining conditions are met. So will you or someone on staff be a part of that decision?
Excellent question, and yes, we will be a part of that. Tom Faddis and I went down and went through the mine about 4 weeks ago and viewed for ourselves what conditions are located on our lease and feel very comfortable in presenting this to the board. But yes, as difficult mining conditions are found within the mine, we'll take a look at that situation and decide whether a reduced royalty would be applicable or not.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you for that comment. Yes, go ahead.
The Oil and Gas and Minerals Committee has talked lengthy about this operation. In fact, I've followed it for the last few years, and we feel very satisfied that the staff has done an excellent job in working out the criteria how to evaluate when they are in adverse conditions so that we can maximize the benefit to SITLA. And so we recommend the board consider this for approval.
Thank you, Don. So the committee has looked at this, is recommending approval. Do we have any other questions for Andy or for any of the members on that committee? Hearing none, we would I would be open for a motion to approve the memo that was presented to us by Andy, allowing for a royalty adjustment during adverse mining conditions.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion that we approve the royalty rate reduction from 8 to 5% under adverse mining conditions at this site.
Okay, we have a motion from Don. We have a second.
I'll second it. This is Roger.
Okay, we have a motion from Don, a second from Roger. Any further discussion? I would ask then for a vote. Warren?
I vote in favor of the motion.
Rick?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. The next item is a proposed negotiated sale of parcels comprising 1,637 acres of land in Kane County, the Red Knoll. And Dave, you're going to take this one. Dave, you are. Dave, we're not hearing you. You on mute?
Yes, I was on mute. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. This is an issue that we have been talking about for 3 or 4 or 5 months. It originally started out as a frac sand with red sands, of which they thought they were going to be able to sell this frac sand because it met the higher standard to oil companies either in the Una Basin or New Mexico or Texas. Coming to find out they couldn't end up getting it done. We then started to work with Best Friends through Best Friends Animals through the Red Sands people, and came up with a deal of which we would sell the 1,637 acres, which included the sand, for $6.3 million. The stipulations on the sand are that we cannot do anything with the sand unless we have possession of the surface, which we don't. We've also reserved the oil and gas minerals 500 feet below the surface. So if we're going to come in on that, we have to do it through a horizontal drilling or something like that. So we have reserved whatever minerals we can under that ground. We truly don't believe there's anything there right now, but we have reserved it according to our state law and our state code. The deal will be $6.3 million, of which within the next 2 weeks for the signing, we'll receive 10% down. That goes hard, automatically or non-refundable. And then within the next 120 days, we will finish up the entire deal and receive the $6.3 million entirely. There will not be any interest on the rest of the money between the down payment and the final signing, but that's the way we've had to negotiate it out. Staff has worked very hard on this for the last week. I would like to thank Andy and Tom, and also Chris Giraldi, and also Chad Staley from Red Sands, and also Best Friends of Animals. We have both driven a hard bargain back and forth, but I believe it preserves what their mission statement is on preserving the animals down there in that area. I would say that Best Friends is the largest animal sanctuary in the United States, and they are doing a very good cause. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would turn it back to you if any questions want to be asked.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
This is Rick. Dave, do you want to just explain where this came in relation to how you priced this in relation to the appraisal?
We did have it appraised. We priced it. That's a tricky question, Rick. And we are above the appraisal price by quite a ways. I guess that's the best way I can. Yeah. When you include the sand on it, we are above the appraised price by quite a ways.
Okay.
Any other questions from board members? This is one that we need a motion on, so I'll take some questions first and then open it up for a motion.
Lonnie, this is Warren. I'd offer the comment that Don and I were after our last board meeting, met with the Surface Committee to talk about this property, and we took a pretty hard position and set a limit at which we were willing to make this deal, and the staff has accomplished that. So it was discussed very thoroughly there. We went over a lot of details, and based on this, I think we're where we need to be on this property, including the value of the sand. I certainly can recommend that it go forward. I'll defer to Don if he wants to make the motion. Otherwise, I will.
Thank you. I'd forgotten. I was ill that day, and I'd forgotten. So that is a recommendation from the Surface Committee who discussed this transaction. Thank you. Okay, would be open for a motion.
I'll make the motion. I recommend that we accept this offer to purchase the negotiated sale for the competing interest in the Red Sands area of southern Utah.
Okay, we have a motion from Don. Do we have a second?
This is Warren. I'll second the motion.
We have a second from Warren. Any further discussion? If not, I'll ask for a vote. Warren?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Mike Maurer?
Yes.
Don Foote?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And the chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much. A lot of work went into that, Mr. Director, and thank those that were involved. I think that was
thank you.
That was we'll hope that closes in the current environment.
Hey, Lonnie, this is Roger. You didn't call my name on that vote. But I vote aye.
I'm sorry. Roger, I skipped. I'm sorry, I've got a list right here. You'd think I could read down through it. I'm sorry. Okay, Roger votes aye as well. Thank you. Thanks for noting that. Okay, that takes us to the end of our agenda today. Are there any other comments? Hearing none, I would just thank those of you who participated in the call today. I hope that you're keeping safe. I hope that your families are well. This truly is an unprecedented time. I don't think we know how we're going to come out of this because we've never been in something like this. But we're hoping for a quick rebound once people get back to work. I would hope, Mr. Director, that your people are safe and that they feel like they can efficiently work from home if they need to. But I hope that we're keeping up with things. I'm very grateful in our business that we've kept a lot of people working, and of course that's the next big challenge in our economy is to get people back to work. The arithmetic is very daunting. You don't have enough trillions of dollars to throw at an economy where people are not working. And so we wish the best for you and your families, but we certainly hope that we can get the economy back to work in a safe way just as soon as possible. Thank you all very much. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. It's Mike Maurer.
Rick Woodbury seconds.
Second from Rick, and I'll take a vote voice vote on this one. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Lisa, I think that was unanimous. So thank you very much. We'll end the meeting today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stop, yeah, perfect.
And let's leave everything on, and then I'm gonna go see if I can, are you gonna try to print them off? Yeah. And should we try to just cut and paste them all to a, Word document? We're just gonna cut and paste them all to a Word document. Okay, yeah. Dave shut it down, and I wanted to cut and paste it, but I'm just gonna take pictures also.
Oh,
Okay.
we can just, we
Go
can,
to the very top, okay, that is the top.
we can just save this if you want, Mike.
Okay, let me just do this too, and then we'll have it twice. Okay.
Well, I think that went okay
Go down
after the,
to a little bit more right there. That's perfect. And then a little more. A little more. Okay, right there. And is that it? One more.
that's it.
That's it. Okay, good. If you could save that, does that save that whole thing too, or just a screenshot?
It'll just save the text.
Okay. Yeah, if you could save that.
Actually, it doesn't allow us to dump it, so,
So can you cut and paste it into a Word document?
yeah, I'll do that.
Just save it as complete, Hangouts text or something.
Okay,
For the day. Yeah. For the meeting. For the meeting.
okay, I'll put it out on the, S drive.
Still streaming live.
Yeah, okay. We'll end the streamings.
I gotta wait for him before I do that.
Microphone?
Oh, yeah, we can turn the mic off.